Alright, let me know if you can hear that alright, or if you see that alright, if you are joining us. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes to see if anyone else joins us on Facebook, or if anyone is coming in person. I know my mom said she's on her way, so she's not here yet, but we can wait a little bit. Hello, my mother is finally here.
Hello.
I say finally as if I've been waiting forever, but I just turned this thing on like a second ago.
You want me to keep the door open? The front door. You want me to go shut it?
You go ahead and start. Alright. My mom's just running down the hallway real quick. She'll be right back. So, for those of you who are joining us or watching us later, welcome back to Missional Mindsets. Tonight is our very last class. Woo. I know it seems like it's been dragging on a very long time because, I went to Florida and then we had Ash Wednesday and it's like, woo! But tonight is the last night, and tonight we are going to be finishing out by talking about how to fit our personality types and our passions into various ministries, specifically like ministries here at Northside. 2 weeks ago, the week before Ash Wednesday, we did that with spiritual gifts, and now we're just going to wrap it up using personality types and passions. Tonight shouldn't be too long, so we'll just keep it nice, short, and sweet. And if you have anything to add, don't be afraid to comment on the video. You can comment during the live stream, or you can comment after. It doesn't matter. If you weren't able to comment your personality type or passions on the video three weeks ago, you can post it here tonight if you want to. If you want to share with everyone what your personality type is, that'd be awesome. It's just an interesting way to, get to know everyone and to, see how everyone else best fits into things. So that'd be pretty cool. So we're going to start tonight off with our personality types. So we'll get a little bit of a recap. So what does our personality type say about us? If you were able to do the personality type test, we focused on the Myers-Briggs test, which is the one where you're given 4 letters. Each letter is a choice between 2 options, so you could be one of 16 choices. And we focused on that because they said 4 distinct things about our personality. First, we talked about how we interact with our surroundings, which is extrovert or introvert. We talked about how we see the world and process information, which is either you're a sensing person or you're an intuitive person. How we make decisions and cope with emotions, which are thinking people versus feeling people. And the 4th distinct one is how we adopt and approach life based on our decisions, which can be either a judging person or a perceptive person. Now don't let the titles of these confuse you. Just because it says judging doesn't mean you're a judgmental person. It's just based off of how you take the information that you've processed and the decision that you've made and how you actually change your actions to fit it. That's just what that means. I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to kind of process this. And if you have any comments you want to make about any one of these 4 things, now is your chance to ask it. Do you have any questions about it, Mom?
No.
No?
I'm just taking my notes. I was trying to find out where I wrote down where I was. Okay.
Alright, so what we're going to do tonight is we're basically going to, instead of taking a specific personality type, kind of what we did with the spiritual gifts, and applying it to a various ministry, I'm actually just going to break down each of the 4 distinct types, or the 4 distinct areas, and what ministries you might best fit in, whether you're one way or the other in each 4 of those categories. So the first one is how we interact with our surroundings. So for introverts, introverts are better in situations with less of a demand for a great deal of social interactions. And that doesn't mean that social interactions go out the window, but introverts require time alone to recharge, to gather their thoughts, and to kind of settle themselves a little bit. They're energized from being alone. And so they deal better and they think better in situations where they're not, forced to be in something very chaotic like a bunch of people being around them. And because they are more reserved people, they fit better in ministries where they can work behind the scenes. One of the things with behind the scenes is not everyone, thinks about the behind the scenes things that go into ministries. A lot of people see the end result and that's all they think about. While introverts work better with the situations that go on behind the scenes because they are not forced necessarily to interact with the people and the end results, but they can still lend a hand to that ministry and whatever it entails. So, for example, the baby room. That's one of our biggest ministries here. There's a lot of face-to-face interactions that go on with that, but there's also a lot of non-face-to-face interactions. So people who are highly introverted might do better with the, sorting, organizing, labeling kind of aspect of the baby room, and less with the meeting the people who need and who come in their appointments. Now the opposite to this is extroverts. Extroverts are better in situations that have a high demand for social interactions with both familiar and unfamiliar faces. Meaning they get their energy from being around people, and it doesn't matter what people they're surrounding themselves with. They love and they need people to gather their thoughts. And so they're more suited for taking the initiative in actions and being the face of a ministry. They're the type of people that really thrive when they're the person people think of when you think of a ministry. Or when, if you're someone who doesn't know much about Northside, when you see a person, you associate that person with that ministry. And extroverts are great for that kind of role because they need that face-to-face interaction to make the ministry function for them. Now, I know most of the people that commented their personality type said that they're an introvert. And I didn't get a lot of extroverted people comment, but I know quite a few at this church who are extroverts. And there really is a big difference between how an introvert functions and how an extrovert functions. For me, I'll give you an example. I'm a very introverted person, and my dad is an extroverted person. My dad needs people. He doesn't handle situations very well when there aren't people. He kind of needs to go a little cuckoo. Don't tell him I said that. But when it comes to what ministries work best for us, I'm very good at the organizing and the planning part because I don't have to deal with as many people and I can think better. My dad's very good at just running around and saying, what do you need, what do you need, what do you need? I can do it. And he just doesn't. And that fits better for him than it does for me, and that's perfect. Anything you want to add?
Well, when you said something about, those who posted the results of their taking the survey, we introverts love taking tests anyway and
Yes.
surveys. And so, yes, we did that.
Mm-hmm.
The extroverts probably would want the survey read to them and someone else figure out what their personality type is.
Yes, that's a very good way to point it out. Yes.
So of course you didn't get a lot of extroverts post anything because they didn't do the test.
However, if I had talked to them in person, they would have been like, yes, I'm this,
Yeah.
this, and this.
Exactly.
But,
yes.
Alrighty. So when it comes to this, and I'll just say this, I'm not going to go through every ministry we have, but, when you know your personality type, it's better to sit there and think, okay, this is the ministry that I'm considering being a part of, or this is the ministry I am a part of. What aspect of the ministry fits better with my surrounding, energy-wise personality type? Am I going to be better fitted for the face-to-face, or am I going to be better fitted for the behind-the-scenes? That was weird. Okay. I don't know what that was. Okay. The second one is how we see the world and process information. And this is the one where you're either a sensing type or an intuitive type. So we'll start with the first one. A sensing type is better in situations that deal with the here and now. They are practical people and they're tangible thinkers. So ministries that deal with the current needs of people and the current needs of the church, need sensing people. A little copy and paste error there. They need sensing people to make that part work. So let me kind of break this down. Sensing people, it's not that they're not focused on what's happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future, but they thrive off of focusing on what's happening now because they don't want to get distracted from things that haven't happened yet or things that happened and you can't change. So ministries and certain services that focus a lot on what's happening right now, what can I do in this moment, work really well for sensing type of people. So when it comes to our outreach ministries, those are great for sensing types. They can just volunteer, go out, do, and focus on what's happening in that moment without a lot of forethought. And the opposite one to that is the intuitive one. Intuitive people are better at exercising their imaginations as they seek new ideas and possibilities. They thrive in situations where they can brainstorm what ministries might look like and on focusing on what they call the big picture. So you can see this is a lot of the planning aspect, a lot of the forethought, but it's better when they're able to sit down and say, this is where we're at, and these are all the different things that we could go from here. To say that if you start with this ministry, and for an intuitive person, they can say, from here we can hit this, we can hit that, we can go to these people and cover this service. And they love and they need to be able to focus on a little bit more than just what can happen right now. They need to make connections in ministries in order to make sense of it. So when it comes to focusing on the big picture, they look at the whole thing as a whole instead of each ministry in part. One of the fun things about this one is there are people who are hardcore one side and one hardcore the other side, but more than likely this is one of those ones where you're kind of borderline sometimes. Because a lot of things require you to focus on the here and now, and a lot of situations require you to focus on a little bit more, in the future. And ministries require both of them because as much as there needs to be, what does this ministry do in this moment? What can we do at this time? there also needs to be the focus on, okay, now that we've done that, what connections can we make in the, to broaden that or to expand it?
Oh, I wasn't borderline at all.
You were definitely one more than the other.
Oh, yeah.
I'm the person who borders on this. In fact, if you were doing it percentage-wise, I'm 51% one of them and 49% the other.
Wow.
I'm very close. But that's all right. I'm one of those people that can jump from one to the other. Although I do mostly focus on intuition. I am more the type of person that's going to say, okay, but what about the whole thing? What's going to happen if I take a step back and look at the whole picture? Yeah. Anything you want to add? All right, let's move on. All right, well, the third one here is how we make decisions and how we cope with emotions. This is your thinking versus feeling. A lot of people are well aware that they either make decisions based off of, reason and logic, what makes sense, and or they make decisions based off of how they feel or how they think it'll make other people feel. That's not something where this isn't new information necessarily. But with thinking people, I'll start with that one. Thinking people are better in situations that deal with objective information and knowledge. They deal with the logic and reason that makes ministries function. Thinkers are the type of people who are going to sit and work the problem out. They're going to make sure they understand that if this is what we want to do, that it fits in with how we can do it, where we can do it, when we can do it, all of those different factors, so that when it comes time for that ministry to actually hit the ground running, they know it's going to run and not fall over. They're going to be the ones that say, okay, if we want to do this ministry, we have to accommodate this particular path to get there. An example that comes to my mind is we used to, a very long time ago, we had a bus ministry where we had a bus, we'd go and pick people up who couldn't make the ride here, and we'd bring them to church on Sundays or to whatever activities they wanted. A great ministry. Now, as time has moved on and the world around us has changed, people like me who are thinkers might think a little differently about a ministry like that because of all the negative side effects to it. And so a thinker is going to look at that ministry and say, okay, now we can't just do the ministry, but we have to put certain, safety procedures in place. We have to do certain routes. We've got to do certain logical things in order to make it work. A feeler, on the other hand, who's slightly different, would probably look at that situation in the reverse. So first off, a feeling person is better in a situation where they can follow their heart. They serve best in ministries where compassion is the primary focus. So for that bus ministry example, they're going to look at that situation and say, but we need to get people to church. These people need it. They love it. They want to come. And the only thing running through their mind is if they want to be here, we'll make it happen for them. And so you can see where a ministry needs both of these type of people pushing for both sides of it. You need to have a ministry needs to have a person pushing for the compassion and the service opportunities, and you need to have a person who's pushing for the, okay, but let's do this in the best way. Anything you'd like to add?
This is probably my hardest part of my personality, because this is where I'm on the borderline. I am 51% thinker, 49% feeling. Mm-hmm. So I am constantly struggling with
Yes, and
with myself.
That's a good word to put it. Struggling. This is one of those ones where even if you're hardcore one over the other, as a Christian, we're constantly struggling with this is a ministry that we desperately need because we have that need in our community and we have that need in our people. And if we are on a mission to love people, then that needs to take primary focus. That needs to be where we go. But we also have to make sure that we're doing it in a way that it doesn't just crash and burn. Right. So even people who are hardcore thinkers have to balance, but what's the need that we need over the logic, and people who are hardcore feeling have to stop themselves from just going. They have to say, okay, I know this is the need, but we've got to make sure that we do this right. Otherwise, that need is going to just get bigger, and we're in no way going to be able to help them. Mm-hmm. So depending on which one you are, it's good to find a ministry that allows you to be the person who advocates for one or the other. I'm going to be that person advocating for, reason and logic, but I desperately need someone to be there, countering me and saying, but we also need to find the balance. Alrighty. The last one is how we adopt and approach life based on our decisions. This is after everything is said and done, after the information has come in, after we've thought it through, after we've made a decision to go one way or the other. Now we actually have to put it into action. And we've got either judging people types or perceptive types. So those who are judging personality types, what it means is that they're better in situations where they can see and map out the course ahead. They work best where they can plan ministries and where clarity is valued. So when it comes to actually adopting the path that we're going to take, it's not just about making sure the plan is in place, it's seeing how that plan looks. So we can plan for days, but until we can visualize that that plan is going to take us here, and then back here, or whatever, then it doesn't really make much sense to us. Perceptive people are better in situations where flexibility can be used in unexpected challenges. They're better suited to deal with ministries when the plan goes off the rails, and they react to their environment instead of trying to control it. The difference between these two is, when you process information and you make a decision and you plan for that decision to work and you go through all those steps, you still never know what life is going to throw at you. And some people handle that very well. These people. Some people do not handle that very well. Those people. And a ministry needs both to function. Because if you never know what's going to happen, you still need to be prepared for either one. One of the good things I learned when I was at Olivet, and I know there were a few of them, but the only one coming to mind, is that there's a difference between planning for something and preparing for something. Planning for something means that you have come up with every situation that you like that's going to happen. You've worked it down to the tiniest little detail because you're wanting it or making it happen that way. When you plan something, you're almost saying, this is how it's going to go, and I'm going to make sure that the puzzles fit in that particular way. I'm going to make sure my plan happens the way I have planned it, because I've planned it. But when you prepare for something, then you plan for various different options, various different outcomes, so that when life throws you curveballs, that the people who are really good and can bounce back from them can say, okay, now we've got 5 different options. We've prepared for something to happen that's bad, and now we can go for it. Now, I'm a judging type. And I can come up with 10 different ways something is going to happen. But I need someone who's perceptive to, when that moment happens, take my 10 options and find the one that works. Because I wouldn't be able to do that, even though I've prepared for various different outcomes. I wouldn't be able to sit there and go, oh my goodness, what I've planned or what I've prepared is out the window. Which one of these do I do now? That's where I need this person. And so in ministries like outreach ministries or church life ministries, where you can't necessarily know what's going to happen at the end, especially if you plan for it like months in advance, you need the person who's going to plan it months in advance, and you need the person who's going to be able to say, when it push comes to shove, I'm going to be the one that makes the final cut, makes the final choice. You need to find which one you are, so you know whether or not you're that person or you're that one. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Hope I didn't ramble on about that. Alright. One thing to keep in mind is that ministries are not tailor-made for specific personality traits. One of the reasons when we talked about spiritual gifts, I was able to say, if you have this gift, you might be best in this ministry. Because, like with spiritual gifts, they're mostly tailored to certain things. You know, teaching is teaching, giving is giving, and you need to find the ones that cater to what your gift is. Personality types aren't quite the same, because ministries require both. There are a lot of ministries and service opportunities that are designed around spiritual gifts, like I mentioned, but the same cannot be said about personality types. No matter what the ministry or service is, to make it function properly, it needs a little bit of every type of person to make it work. Ministries only work if they're well-rounded. And being well-rounded means you need a little bit of the opposites from each other. You need a north just like you need a south. You need an east and a west. People who are polar opposites, but when you put them together, they give you everything you need to complete the puzzle. Ministries almost can't function unless you have people who are kind of battling it out, who are saying this, but also this. You know, one side and the other need to come together in harmony to make it work, so that no matter what situations come up, your bases are covered. Another thing is that personalities are not set in stone. With spiritual gifts, you know, we're given spiritual gifts. When we decide to follow Christ, He gives us our gifts. And yes, those gifts might change a little bit. We might get new gifts, you know, as we grow and mature. But for the most part, our spiritual gifts are our spiritual gifts. Our personality types, and this might shock you, are supposed to change. We all have natural personality types that we've developed from early on in our lives. We have natural tendencies. That's what our personality type means. These are the things we naturally gravitate towards, one or the other. And as we develop from early childhood through adolescence into adulthood, our brains develop around which we naturally get pulled towards. However, part of maturing in all aspects of life, so maturing our brains as we get older, learning more things, and even as how we mature spiritually, so we grow in our faith, requires an understanding that we have to change as we grow. Our personality types have to learn to adapt. You might tend to lean towards one side, but as you grow, you need to learn that to be the best version of myself, we have to step outside our comfort zones. We have to push the boundaries of what we are naturally drawn to and do something where maybe not the most comfortable with, but is necessary for ministry or necessary for our calling to be fulfilled. I mentioned the book Soul Types before, and I wish I had it here in person to show you, but Soul Types is a book that introduces the concept of tailoring our spiritual information to both what our current personality type is, as well as what that it might become down the line. One of the things, and if you got a hard copy of, pieces of papers and the PDF files or whatever, in there, there's a chart with the personality types that talks about how your personality type has a dominant trait, a first or a third, fourth trait. Trying to remember what the fourth one is. Is it what is it, Mom?
What?
Yeah, dominant.
Whatever, AUX?
Auxiliary.
Oh, okay.
You've got a dominant trait, an auxiliary trait, a third, and a fourth.
Mm-hmm.
What that means is our dominant one is obviously the one you're most comfortable with. And we have to then move to our auxiliary one. And then we move to, which usually is the opposite of us. And then we move to the third one, which is a slightly different one. And the fourth one is the opposite of our third one. And as we grow, we change our personality types so that by the end of our life, we've kind of covered a little bit of everything. We've learned to become a well-rounded person on our own. Have any questions? Well, this book, if you do have any questions, really maps it out very well. It tells you not only basically that if this is your personality type, this might be what works best for you, but it also challenges you to say, you might draw more towards this, but how about you try doing this instead and work your way out of your little box, to step outside of it and explore what differences the world might offer you. And when it comes to ministries, this really helps because maybe you're drawn to a ministry that already has a ton of people with your same personality type, but you're drawn to it. So maybe if you're the person who's willing to advocate for someone different than you, then you can be the person in that ministry saying, okay, I agree with you, but let's introduce a new idea here. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Now the last thing I want to mention is passions. So how can I find a place where my passions are valued? Now passions are one of those things where you either know what they are or you'll eventually know what they are. They're just something that is based off of your current life situations that really get you fired up. That really fill you with, desire to do something for God. And they change based off of wherever we are in life. Whatever circumstances we've gone through, whatever struggles or, highlights that we've gone through, our passions will shift to accommodate for that. For someone who's currently going through a move, might be really passionate about whatever a move might entail. Someone who is an artist like me might be really passionate about having people understand what art is. It just depends. And so finding a place where your passions work is a part of your ministry and a part of your calling too. So most people have unique passions that God has given them for unique reasons. My passions, there might not be anyone else who has the same passions as me, which is okay. But that said, it's not always easy to find ministries that are catered to your passions. You're not going to just walk through the door of a church where they're saying, hey, we have this ministry that fits your passions and desires exactly. That's almost never going to happen. If it does happen, we're very lucky. So there are two different ways to approach how to make your passions fit with your ministry. The first one is knowing your passion and then adapting them to fit the ministries that are available. For example, one of my passions is introducing art in the church. Yes, you might be thinking we use art in church all the time, but not everyone has, an understanding of it. And I'm very passionate about helping people understand that and use it and value it. Now, there isn't a kind of art ministry here at Northside, but every ministry can use a little bit of art to make it a little better. I can change my passion for art to fit the circumstance and the necessity for it by building something for a ministry, by designing something for another one, by focusing on the, foundational stuff that art might be able to make a little bit more approachable. So instead of designing an entire ministry around my little bubble, I can make my bubble fit everywhere else. So if you have a passion and you know that it can kind of fit in with different ministries, you just have to figure out, okay, how can I get it to fit in? The other way to approach this is by aiming to introduce new ministries that are kind of temporary for your passion. Not every passion needs to be a every week, lifelong kind of ministry. Maybe it's a 4-week class that you do once every 2 years. Maybe it's a seminar you do one day every year. If you find your passion and you say, hey, this is something I'm passionate about, let's get this into the minds of people, let's provide them with some resources. We don't have to talk about it all the time, but every once in a while might be what your passion needs. So, for example, I have a passion for mental health awareness. Now, we don't talk about mental health every single week here at Northside, but focusing on it maybe once a year, maybe every so often, might be just what we need. In April, we're actually going to be doing a mental health thing here. We haven't quite gotten the advertisement out yet, but you're hearing it first from me. But that might just be what we need. So being a part of that kind of helps me with my passion without making it overwhelming to everyone else. Now, Mom, I know when you posted on Facebook, you hadn't quite figured out your passions yet. Still? Okay. Which I wanted to point out is okay. Like I mentioned, passions are determined by current life situations.
Exactly.
And if you're not in a mind-altering current life situation, maybe you're not as passionate about some things as you might be later on when those circumstances happen. But that doesn't mean you're without passion. We all, as followers of Christ, who have chosen to follow Christ, have a borderline desire to serve God and to do what is necessary. And being able to just find a place where we fit in is a passion that we all, I think, have somewhere inside of us. It's just finding that place that we best fit in when it comes to our spiritual gifts and our personality types.
I think what I've been struggling with is while I was raising my kids, all my passions and service revolved around the kids. So whatever I got involved with, the passion was to get my kids involved with, do it for my kids, so they would learn about God and become involved in the church. Now I don't have that anymore. So the last 5 years, I have found it very hard to be passionate about something specific. Not saying that, I'm always passionate about singing, passionate about being in God's house. It's been hard to do that this past year, obviously. So, I don't know. I
think the good news about those kind of situations is that one way or another, I think things always come back in full circle. So you mentioned that you were very passionate about things when they involved the kids. Well, now you have a grandkid, and maybe those same passions will rear their pretty little heads back again, because now you have someone else who will enjoy them or reap their benefits. Mm-hmm. So if you're somewhere in the same boat as my mom, maybe either waiting till grandkids, or maybe having a friend who has a kid might be the person you need to focus your passions for. You know, if that's your kind of passion. Whatever your passion might be, or whatever it was, maybe it's changing the focus of it instead of just finding a new passion. But sometimes our passions are lifetime passions, and that's okay. We just have to, like I mentioned, adapt them to where they need to be best fit. And it's okay to not always have a passion for something. You know, it's the same thing about, it's like saying everyone who follows God is never in doubt about God. Yes, we are. We all go through times where we doubt things, where we're not, quite as sure about whether or not we're saved, or whether or not God can forgive us, or whether or not God might even be real. Those are all things that run through our brains every once in a while. Even for the most devout followers of God, we're human. Those thoughts come and go for us. But, even people who are in doubt reap benefits from going through the same spiritual formations, the same disciplines, even if they don't feel the same about them. When it comes to journaling, some people are really gung-ho at first for journaling, and then they kind of fizzle out. Well, even if you fizzle out and you still journal, eventually they'll mean something to you again. Eventually, when you get that fire back in you, reading back over the times when you didn't have that fire gives you a lot of insight, a lot of perception into things that you wouldn't have understood if you only focus on when you're fired up about them. And so I think when it comes to passions in your ministry, it's just as beneficial to know the things you're not as passionate for at the moment, and saying, okay, what do I need to do to maybe light that spark up? Maybe just to get it going a little bit. It's almost like sitting in water. The more you move, the more waves are formed. But if you just sit still, the waves will never happen. So sometimes it might just be, I need a little bit of a push to get the ball rolling. I just used like 4 different metaphors in one sentence. So I hope you followed through with what I said. Well, that's all I have for tonight. If you have any questions, comments that you want, or that you think of later on watching this, don't be afraid to comment on this video, even if it's a few weeks after this video happens. I usually go back through and read them. Other people might go back through and read them. So don't be afraid to even go back to previous ones if you're just now watching these, and comment something you've learned about them, or something you might have a question about. Maybe I said something you didn't agree with. If you want to drop a comment so that we can discuss it, I would be more than happy to. Or if you just want to say that you learned something new from it, that's also just as welcome. So I hope you guys got something out of this 6-week class. Hope you were able to learn a little bit about yourself, a little bit more about Northside. And as time moves forward, if you meet people who you think would benefit from this, these are also on a playlist on YouTube, which you can also find on the Northside app. So you can direct them to watch these even in years in the future. So with that being said, have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.